This is All India Radio. On the eve of the monsoon session of Parliament, the News Services Division of All India Radio brings you a discussion on issues before Parliament. The participants are Syed Nasir Hussain from Congress, Dr. Seema Malik from NCP, V. Sivadathan from CPIM, Amarjeet Kaur from CPI, and Anurag Sharma from BJP. Senior journalist K.V. Prasad moderates the discussion.
On July 18th, the monsoon session of Parliament will begin. And of course, this is an important session. A lot of bills are expected to come up for discussion and debate. Apart from that, there'll be really two crucial and key elections. One to the President of India on July 18th, the day one of Parliament. And of course, towards the last week is the polling for the Vice President of India. Besides this, we have a slew of issues that the opposition wants to raise. And in the discussion that's going to follow is what we are going to hear, what members of opposition would like to raise and what the government has plans for session. Mr. Hussain, the monsoon session begins on July 18th. Of course, we'll see on day one the voting for the President of India. But as the session goes on, what are the plans that the Congress party has? We already heard some of the issues that the party proposes to raise. Can you give us a brief on that, please?
I think just before the Parliament gets into a session, opposition parties generally get together and decide on to what kind of issues have to be raised. All other opposition parties, Congress strategy group does meet every time and they decide upon the issues that have to be taken up. As you all know, the Indian economy is in crisis. There are lots of myth that is being created over economic recovery. Let me tell you that still we have to not even touch the pre-pandemic level. And I would also like to remind the people of our country that the GDP had started falling from 2017-18 onwards itself. And much before the pandemic started, already the economy was in turmoil. So this has to be discussed. And then you are seeing the rising prices and inflation in every single sector in our country. And especially regarding fuel, gas, petrol, diesel, and then the way it affects our farmers, our farming class, and then the essential commodities. Last time also, we had given notices both in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha to discuss this issue, but we were never allowed to discuss this issue, though we did some protests also within the Parliament and outside the Parliament, despite that there was no discussion allowed by the government. So I think that will again be taken up. Unemployment is a huge issue. MSME sector still needs a huge recovery. That is the sector where we get lots of employment opportunities. So that sector has still not been given any importance by the government after the COVID crisis. And also, wages have come down in agricultural sector, wages have come down for the laborers in general also. For the opposition has raised voice both in the Parliament and outside the Parliament. And there is this employment crisis, especially seen after what we call this Agnipath scheme was announced. There were violent protests, there were burning of trains and so on and so forth. But the government still went ahead with the Agnipath scheme without trying to take the opposition on board, without trying to discuss it in the Parliament, without trying to have a more analytical, more discussions on that with the more stakeholders in it. But the point, what I'm trying to make here is that this is a huge problem of unemployment. Every year, every month, there's a large number of people that are being added to the list of unemployment youth in our country. And increasing debt of GDP, export and the current account deficit crisis is there, coal shortage and power crisis is there, inflation and export crisis is there. Our industrial production, our agricultural production, our exports have continuously fallen. We need to have a detailed discussion as to how we need to increase our production both in agricultural sector, industrial sector. These are certain things which need to be discussed in the Parliament, which we would like to take up in the coming Parliament. And there are issues which threaten our democracy, which has a firm footing for the past 75 years in our country, which is supposed to be one of the largest democracies in the world, which can also be called as the mother of all democracies. But now, there's a threat to this democracy. People in power are trying to create divisions in our society, are trying to mislead the population by bringing all kind of divisions in the society. BJP's Islamophobic rhetoric has a huge impact in our country. The San Parivar's Islamophobic rhetoric has a huge impact on our society. The kind of divisions they have created, the mob lynchings, the riots seen during, orchestrated riots seen during some of our festivals, Azan, hijab, halal, some of the issues which doesn't matter much have been taken up by the San Parivar and created divisions in the society. This has to be discussed because this has led to the rising of communalism in our country, which was never seen before. It is not only that we Indians are being threatened by this. We are losing face all over the world. There are articles written in foreign newspapers and journals and magazines. So this is something which has to be taken up for discussion. Politicization of education will be taken up. Stifling of freedom of speech and expression. You have seen that the Lok Sabha Speaker has issued a gag order by saying that certain words cannot be used in the parliament and they have been declared unparliamentary. Even if you can't use a word called corrupt, if you can't use a word called incompetent, how will you describe the performance or the misgovernance of a government? So these are sort of things which need to be taken up. Then the security, India-China relations and security relations on Indo-China border. We have been asking for paper on this. We have been asking for discussion on this. But till now, we have not been allowed to discuss this issue.
Mr. Hussain, I just wanted to ask you another issue. I mean, you did mention the fact that before the session gets going, members of parliament in the opposition would get together and chalk out a strategy. But we've seen there are differences among the opposition parties, and at times they are not able to come together and try to corner the government as they want to. So how do you get over that situations?
I think we need to understand that we are all different political parties with different political ideologies. We have our vision, we have our programs and policies. But then on the issues that concerning the people of our country and the issues that concerning our country itself, we need to get together, and we do get together on different issues and then take on the government. There are issues within the opposition also, and there are bound to be issues because we do fight against each other in different states. So every political party would like to maintain its identity. So it is obvious that every party will have to carefully take sides, will have to carefully position itself politically because their survival in the sides is also very important. But on the larger issues, for instance, when the farm laws were brought in, every political party opposed it and supported the farmers' agitation all over the country. There are issues where maybe one or two parties may take a slightly different position or will take a position against the government or not be seen with different opposition parties on board, but they also take a stand against the government. So I think there shouldn't be much reading into whether all are behind one banner or not. But what we have to see is whether they are favoring the government or they are opposing the government. By and large, the opposition parties in the last few sessions, what I have seen, they all have come together to attack the government on important issues that concern the people of our country and the security of our nation.
Dr. Malik, on behalf of the Nationalist Congress Party and on behalf of the opposition, we would want to know what are the key issues that you would like to highlight and take up for debate and discussion in the upcoming session.
The first thing is the Indian economy, which is, I think it's a major concern for us. We talk about the 5 trillion economy, but you see, it is very unfortunate when we compare the economy of our country with countries like Bangladesh and Nepal. You know about our GDP, where it is going. We understand that our economy is recovering and it was hit hardest, I think, say, in the COVID-19 pandemic, but it was not in a very good shape before the pandemic also. And we really want to know that what the government is going to do for this. So we had to work hard for this, and this is a major concern for us. Then the second thing is the unemployment. Very briefly, I'm telling you this thing. So in the 45 years, this is the maximum unemployment. And we would like to know that what our government is going to do for this. There are so many vacancies in the different departments, whether it's the central government, 8 lakhs, and in railway 2 lakhs, and in other departments like the ministry and the privatization. You see, the privatization is contributing a lot to the unemployment. This year, we cannot ignore the Agnipath scheme. They don't believe in a discussion or on a consensus, and they put a scheme, and then they do some amendment. We are really concerned that what these people are going to do after 4 years, they are the youth of our country. So we would like to discuss this Agnipath scheme. I think it needs a lot, although they do whatever they like, but I think it needs a lot of discussion, and so this is a matter of great concern.
Dr. Malik, Prime Minister recently announced the government has decided to recruit some 10 lakh people. So does it not address the issue of unemployment of which you are flagging the issue?
That's what I'm telling. When we talk about the unemployment, this is a major burning issue, which is a matter of great concern for us because nothing is clear. Everybody needs a job. This is a major issue in our country. So definitely, it's not like this that nobody will come or something. Of course, they're going ahead with the scheme. But what I think that it needs a discussion, and the rising prices, there's a lot of harassment for them. The pulses, the vegetables, the gas cylinder, more than 1,000 rupees, the petrol and the diesel price hike. So many times we have discussed, and again we are going to raise this issue because which is important for everyone now.
Yeah, Dr. Malik, we have noticed time and time again that either the opposition does not have a strategy which reflects the collective approach, or at times we have heard the ruling coalition say that the opposition is not allowing the House to function.
So how can you cannot raise your voice in the parliament? Then why the opposition is formed? What opposition is there? It is not we who are not allowing them to function the parliament or something, because they are imposing their thoughts, all the bills, they are passing without the consent of the opposition. So naturally, the opposition will speak something. So this is the thing, and they don't believe. The main thing is that they don't believe in any kind of discussion with anyone.
Mr. Siddhasan, we'd like to know from you as to the issues that the CPIM in particular and the left in general would like to highlight in this session, please.
The government is trying to destroy the character of Parliament. Everybody knows the Parliament is a center of discussion and debate. But here, the government is trying to control the words parliamentarians are using. And also, they are trying to pass the bill without discussion. So these things we will address in the Parliament, because Parliament for the people. Parliament, the interest of the Parliament to protect the interest of the people. But here, the government is trying to neglect the duty of the Parliament. They are only promoting the corporate interest. Recently, the Secretary General of the Lok Sabha has issued a notification. They banned 65 words for using inside the Parliament. These all things we will raise. The prices is an important issue, and also the education sector. They are liberalizing and privatizing the education institution, the issues of railway, issues of civil aviation, and the issues of army and other health sector also we will discuss. The expenditure of the government in health sector is very minimal now. Not only the budgetary allocation, recently the department's allocation to the various departments also we were verified during the time of budget discussion. Opposition parties, including CPIM, have raised this issue, but government is not ready to change their attitude. So these all things we will discuss inside the Parliament.
So, Vasudevan, you had mentioned, of course, on the issue of unparliamentary words which have been added to the lexicon, and the Speaker had said that this is part of the process.
Words which are using the parliamentarians inside the Parliament. I think the Communist Party members have well knowledge on the word and the implications. So here, what they are doing, they are trying to make barriers in front of the discussion point. That is why they are banned the word of corruption and the other tier and like other words. So these things we will discuss not only inside the Parliament, outside the Parliament also we will discuss.
Mr. Vasudevan, if you look at the general thing in monsoon session, 1A, it is a session where legislative agenda is taken up at a very fast pace. In the sense there are more bills that usually are taken up in this session because this is the first session after the budget. You also mentioned some other issues that you would like to raise which affect the people. But one of the things we have noticed over the years, number of the proceedings being stalled for various reasons, thereby debate and discussion itself is losing its space in Parliament.
Now, the government is diluting the parliamentary procedures, trying to mislead the country. Earlier, Parliament, time for long discussion on bills and resolutions, short duration discussions were there. Lot of issues, the discussions inside the Parliament would happen. But now, we are seeing the bills have been passed within 20 minutes after the introduction of the bill, without proper discussion. So, we trying to intervene these areas and try to organize all political parties against this government.
Mr. Vasudevan, how confident is the opposition of carrying everybody along? Because we see there are divisions or differences among the members of the opposition parties. They are not unison in taking up issues, that they have different priorities, which at terms do not work in terms of floor coordination seems to be missing. So how do you plan to address that issue?
Inside the opposition parties, difference of opinion will be there. That is not a problem. But majority of the political parties in opposition, they are trying to make a movement against this ruling alliance. What ruling alliance is doing, they are trying to sabotage the democratic structure of the nation. Now, different state governments assisting because of the support of real estate mafia and some resort mafia, not because of the people's support. So we are not worried about the unity of the opposition parties. I think not only the opposition parties, including the common people in our country, together they will fight against the policies of the ruling government because their lifeline issues are there. The petrol and diesel price rise and unemployment issues, these all things are there. They will rise it. Very recently, we see the contractualization in army. So I am sure the political parties, those who are in opposition side, together they will fight against these anti-people policies.
Amarjit ji, we have seen in the past that opposition parties do come together, try and raise issues of concern of people, sometimes collectively and sometimes separately. How do you think the strategy would be this time, and would you be able to identify some of the issues that your party and the left in particular would like to take up in the session?
Yes, there will be effort for coordination with other political parties to take up some serious issues which are concern of all. Those issues will be the rising prices, and especially recently the gas cylinder prices are once again raised. It's already crossed 1,000, and we know that the scheme which was started as Ujjwala, maximum of the beneficiaries are not able to fill up their cylinders also. So this will be important issue. Second issue, that is the whole Agnipath scheme, in which they are saying they are going to create Agniveer. And we have seen the spontaneous protest by our younger generation in the country because the youth was promised 2 crore jobs every year, but youth has been cheated, the jobs are not being created. And during their regime, almost about 60 lakh jobs were advertised in various sectors of government departments and PSUs, including railways. Examinations conducted, results announced, lists prepared, but then many of those lists cancelled, and the youth kept waiting for 2 years, 3 years for getting the job. So unemployment is quite a serious issue, and this Agnipath scheme is not a solution. Rather, it is going to weaken the armed forces if this kind of Agnipath scheme, the way the government is moving, if such a scheme is brought into practice for another 15 years, then out of our 15 lakh armed forces, only 6 lakh armed forces will remain. That is how the figures are coming out. We know that more than 58,000 of our retired armed personnel applied for jobs. Out of them, 14,000 something only got. That means 2.5% were absorbed. So what are we trying to say? If you want any security guards in front of BJP office or in front of Mahindra came out that we will recruit them, who is stopping them to have security guards? So unemployment is another issue. And thirdly, the government spree of privatizing public sector in the name of pipeline monetization, selling our national resources. That issue will form an important part of our discourse from the left side, especially the issues of labor codes and the way the government wants to move ahead. We will be opposing it once again. And we see how this LIC IPO thing, this whole thing became a fiasco. And LIC have huge losses now. This is coming to the public domain. And recently the government has sold at a very 211 crore rupees only Pawan Hans. Again, it was a public sector unit. And now we are also finding that the government came out just 1 week before in the Public Liability Insurance Act, they are going to make changes, making it employer to be fully free of any kind of punishment and insurance to be given by the private sector insurance companies. We trade unions know it very well, and that's why the left will be raising these issues.
Amarjit ji, I just want to quickly look for your comment. The Prime Minister recently announced that 10 lakh recruitment will take place in the central government, and we've seen reports coming about ministers taking stock of the situation and asking the ministries to speed up the process. So is it not addressing the direction of unemployment?
It's not addressing the direction of unemployment. The reaction from youngsters on the announcement of Agnipath scheme, that is making them to make these statements. It's not seriously as far as government is concerned. Then why they dodged youth? They should also reply how many job losses are going to happen within this 1 year. Job losses are much more than the announcement which government is making about creation of new jobs. So they are not replying. We would like in the parliament to raise these issues.
Now, for the other issue that you were talking is the division within the opposition ranks, which at times does not help the cause of the opposition that it wants to take up.
There are 3 issues which are very, very important issues. Opposition will be seen in unity. One is this scheme which we are asking for withdrawal, and another is price rise issue, common to all, and another is our natural resources and national resources must be protected, vis-a-vis interest of people to be protected. These issues will definitely find closeness along with the issue of democratic spaces for the people. What has happened, how the Teesta was arrested, Teesta Setalvad, just on the comments of Supreme Court, the police was already preparing for framing him for the cases from 20 years or 22 years, like that. Similarly, we find how Mohammed Zubair was arrested on a tweet of 2018. So this trend is on rise. So in this session, we are once again going to raise this thing. I think this will also find some unity in the opposition parties, because all opposition parties are being tagged with government is doing all corruption. And we know how the sell and purchase happened in Maharashtra. So this time, I think unity will be much better than the previous times.
We are sure as we go along and the session begins on Monday, these issues will come up on the floor for discussion and debate. Mr. Sharma, there will be some issues that the BJP and the government would like to be taken up in Parliament, both in form of legislation and other issues for debate and discussion. Can you highlight a few for this?
See, the ones we are really keen on, and I'm hoping some of these bills will come up, which have gone through the various committees, and these have been pending for quite some years now, and quite some time. So there is the Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill, 2021. So that's a very important bill. The other bill which has been pending for quite some time is the Personal Data Protection Bill. And one of the bills which have gone through the DNA technology use, and this bill has also been pending for quite some time. It's been since 2019, and I think India really needs the DNA technology usage bill, especially because of DNA technology being proven to solve crimes, help find people across the world, but we still don't have a proper regulation of the usage of this technology. There is, of course, where we need to really look at our exploration, pushing the country forward, especially as far as research and development and exploration is concerned. So we have a bill called the Indian Antarctic Bill, which is again from this year, which helps the marine living resources and protocols on various environment protection, and of course the Antarctic Treaty, which India has been a signatory to. So the Indian Antarctic Bill is also important, I think. The other, of course, is the Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill. You, of course, have known that for years we've had this issue of piracy near our shores, and of course, especially when people go towards Africa, where they looted tankers, and we've had kidnappings. And India, of course, is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Law of the Seas. So these are kind of important bills I'm hoping that we are able to bring forth, have a healthy discussion, and we hope that the opposition does join us in clearing these bills.
Mr. Sharma, just before the session began, we've seen some sort of a mini debate, if I were to say so, in terms of environment and tribal issues, in the sense of the law being changed. Of course, the Bharatiya Janata Party spokesperson did clarify, but environment is an issue that keeps cropping up off and on, and the opposition and the government don't really seem to be on the same page.
I don't know why. Because one is that we must realize that the Prime Minister himself is one of the biggest environment advocates in the world. And even in this, what happened in Scotland recently in COP26, he has set out an agenda, and we've said that by 2060, India will be carbon neutral. I mean, nobody can imagine India being carbon neutral that early, but the Prime Minister has set out this agenda. We've, well, as far as 2025 will be concerned, we promised the world that one world, one grid, and solar. So even in 2025, we will have probably one of the largest installed capacities of solar anywhere in the world. So the Prime Minister himself realizes how important this is. And all of us in the BJP realize we all do plantations. Crores and crores of trees are planted in this country. UP itself is planting nearly 35 crore trees.
Sharma, if I were to take you some of the issues that the opposition has flagged, and they say they would like to have debate and discussion when the session gets on. One of the things they do point out is the state of economy, in which they flag the issues like unemployment in particular. And they're not very keen or very happy, if I were to use the term, with the Agnipath scheme, which has been for recruitment into the Indian military services. Would you like to comment on that, please?
The Agnipath, I think, is important and critical to the future battle-ready nation. If you do not have a younger force, you don't have a well-trained force. and a technologically enhanced force. So unless you get youngsters coming in, it's much more easier to teach them technology. It's much more easier to get the fighting age of our armed forces to a acceptable world level. Today, you know that we have a slightly aged force. Every country in the world does practice. And I think really the amount of money being given by the government and the youngster leaving, let's say, presumably, because 25% of them are going to be employed back in the armed forces. So 75% of them leaving and joining, let's say, various paramilitary forces or the Home Guard, the UP police, Rajasthan police. A lot of police people are interested in getting trained men. And these youngsters can then, of course, contribute back to society.
As we move forward, I think a member from the Congress party in particular had raised this issue of economy and was not, they said the kind of GDP growth that the country need to have is not happening. And some of the figures quoted by the CPI leader talked of the CMI statistics not showing the economy and the other issues of employment and labor in being a very healthy state. Is that how you look at it?
Among the large economies of the world, we are one of the fastest growing. This has been confirmed by the World Bank. It's been confirmed by various think tanks. Everyone knows the world economy is coming to a slow growth and a slow burn. And as we say, could look at stagnation down the line. The Indian economy is not. Today, you've had historic highs of inflation across the world. You've seen what the U.S. has gone and done. Fed has never increased rates the way they have in the past 8-9 months. Nobody expected the Feds to take such a hard stance on inflation. America is facing its worst inflation ever. Look at the Middle East. I was comparing prices of fuel in the Middle East in an oil exporting nation like the UAE. It's nearly rupee to rupee the same, converting. So, yes, there are challenges across the world, and I think the Modi government has stepped up. And the PLI scheme, the interventions, they've been very, very beneficial for this country so far.
Mr. Sharma, one of the issues which was probably a common factor among all the people of opposition who participate in this program talked about, of course, as I said, economy and the mismanagement for which we just had a word, but also the fact that, for instance, say the valuation of something like the dollar, which some of them raised over an issue. Somebody talks.
Yeah, they see it and they keep saying, oh, it's touching 80, it's touching 80 rupees.
It's crossed 80.
India took its worst beating against the so-called famous economist Prime Minister, where the rupee was devalued, if you remember, and it's not too long in the past. 1. 2. Indian rupee, if you compare it to a basket of currencies against US dollar, has fallen, but not as much as most other currencies across the world have. Even the euro has come down.
Most people in the opposition they said, the recent decision, expansion in the words of unparliamentary words in the lexicon, and they linked it to the freedom of expression in particular being under some kind of a pressure. Your comments on that would be welcome.
There has been no word which has been banned. Let me please be very, very clear on this. No word has been banned, per se. The list which came out talks about the words which were expunged from various speeches last year. And even these words, you can continue to use them as a member of parliament. My right to use certain words inside parliament. I should not be insulting or degrading to the opposition or any other person who I might speak against. I must have a certain amount of decorum and control my verbal output or my verbal output to the extent that there is a certain amount of regard. Now, these words which have been flagged have not been flagged for the first time. There is a list which is declared by the Lok Sabha Secretary in 1999. The first time Indian unparliamentary word. So since 1956, we've had this as a convention since 1999. Every year, these words are added or deleted. These are words which have been expunged from speeches. Members are never penalized if a word is wrongly said. In the House, they are expunged from their speeches. And even in that, if you have an issue with it, you can go back to the Lok Sabha Secretariat and to the Speaker and ask, why is it being so? And you get an explanation.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
We just had a discussion on issues before Parliament. Taking part in it were Syed Nasir Hussain from the Indian National Congress, Dr. Seema Malik from the NCP, V. Shivdasan from CPIM, Amarjit Kaur from CPI, and Mr. Anurag Sharma from the BJP. Thank you very much for all of you to participate in this program.
You were listening to a discussion on issues before Parliament. The participants were Syed Nasir Hussain from Congress, Dr. Seema Malik from NCP, V. Sivadasan from CPIM, Amarjeet Kaur from CPI, and Anurag Sharma from BJP. Senior journalist K.V. Prasad moderated the discussion. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.